So let's take a look at our next step, which is load these data into R. And we're going to start with the file hotdogs.txt and import it as a data frame named hotdogs. So we want to create an object named hotdogs, and we want to import it as a data frame. The file is in a text file, so we know we need to use the read function, and we're going to use read.table. I've already opened the help file for read table, the original table. The complete command is read table, has a lot of different attributes, and one of these here is called read.delim, and read.delim is a file that assumes that the individual items are separated by tabs, so no commas or anything like that. Now, in order to make a decision like this, we need to have a look at the data themselves. So we're going to go to downloads and take a look at hotdogs, and we see there is nothing in between the file, the column vectors. So it's actually a tab or an empty. And so we're going to go back and use delim. And the notebook is quite helpful, or R actually in the background is quite helpful, because we type file. So it suggests to us the file attribute, and now we need to give the name of the file, hotdogs.txt. This needs to be correct. So R has no way from within the R program to check this value. So if you get an error, most likely you just mistyped or misspelled the file name. And actually something I see was already complete here. What you see here is that if you go back to the help file, that there's a default for the delim file, and the default is that the header is true. This is something you needed to remember from data camp. And what this means is that the program assumes that it will find a header row, and takes the header row and turns the elements of the header row into the names of the column vectors. Now, is this true or isn't it? Let's take a look again at our hotdogs file. And when we look at it, we see there is no header line whatsoever. So in this case, we must change the default. We must change it to header equals false. If we don't do that, it will take the first row of this file and turn this into the column vector names. We will also lose one row of data in this process. Okay, so let's do that. This went through. Let's look at the first few lines. Use head command, and here we see the first few lines, first 6 lines, and we see that what R did, it took the non-existing header and assigned vector names v1, v2, v3 to the vectors. Now let's verify. We already know this is a data frame. In fact, we can see it here, data frame. But let's verify this with a command in such a way that we don't just have a lot of data on the screen and need to look for the identification, but we are told that the hotdogs is actually true or not, is a data frame or not, as a Boolean value. And to do that, we use the is.dataframe command on hotdogs, and that should be true. And this structure, you recognize this, the is.dataframe is the same command. If hotdogs was a vector, then it's is.vector. If it's a list, it's is.list, and so on. So we could actually, just for fun, we could find out, this is not part of that, then we could find, is this actually a list at all or not? And the answer is true as well. Why? Because data frames are also list. Not to confuse you, but let's do another one just to see one false. Is it a vector? Are data frames also vectors? We know they aren't, so the answer must be false. And if not, I'm confused. The answer is false. And likewise, of course, it's not a matrix either. Yeah. So we're going to just delete these extra lines here from our solution file and go on to the next one, which is the file swimming pools. Let's look at swimmingpools.csv. And here's a command that I already asked you to enter simply in this form and import it as a data frame pool. So we need to define an object called pools. And we use again the read function, but this time we already know that the file is a CSV file. We named it as such, and we're going to use the CSV2 function and type file equal swimming pools. So pools.csv. And we know that this file has a header. We looked at it earlier. So the header is true. Now we don't strictly need this, so we could actually dispense with it. But I'm just putting it here to make things clearer. Let's send that off and see what pools looks like. That's the next question. Check the structure of pools to make sure that you have what you expected: 2 character volumes and 2 numeric columns. If this confuses you, then remember that you could have looked at swimming pools. Here it is. You see name, address. Those are 2 character columns, and then you have latitude and longitude, which are the geographic position of the swimming pool. In this case, I think in Brisbane, in Australia. So I'm going to close this again, go back to the notebook, and type the structure command, structure of pools. See what happens. And here you see the answer. The answer is surprising, namely it's a data frame, which we expected. Read dot whatever creates data frames if possible, but it contains 20 observations of 1 variable and not 20 observations of 4 variables. And the name of this variable is supposed to be name.address.latitude.longitude, and it's a character. And this is not what we expect. We made a mistake. There's a tip here to fix that mistake, namely take another look at the help page for read table, and this time read on. So I already opened this help page. This is the help page that you get when you type help.read.table into your console, but you could also just Google it if you liked. I prefer to use the console because sometimes the notebook gives odd answers, and then I go to the console to check if this is actually what should happen. So let's get back and let's have a look. And we see there are 2 functions here, read.csv. And we see that one function, they seem identical, but the difference is that one of them has a comma separator for the individual fields, and the other one has a semicolon separator. So what happened here is that the read.csv2 function was looking for semicolon separator, didn't find it, and therefore took all the items in the different columns and put them in one column. And this is why we had this odd result here that you see here in this output. So we need to fix it. And the fix is really simple. We're going to take the same command here, copy it, Control-C. Do not use the copy right click here, because that'll only suggest to you to copy the cell. We don't want to copy the cell. And we're going to copy this. And this time we take the 2 away and replace it by CSV. Everything else is the same. And we run this. And now let's check again with str what we get. And this is what we wanted. 4 variables, 2 character, 2 numeric, and a data frame of 20 observations. And that's correct. Great.